Here's another segment of my conversation with the great Simon Phillips. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music. Moonlight Shadow, speaking of Crisis?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Maggie Riley, that was great too.
Yeah, that was funny enough. You see, I'm not a pop fan. I never was. And to me, those songs are really boring. And that was not my favorite song on the album. And Mike knew that. And when it came to mixing, he said, I'm going to mix this one. Take the day off. And it was really funny. He wouldn't let me near that song. I mean, I produced it, all the instruments going on and vocals, but that was very much Mike's song. And he knew how I felt about it and totally fine about it. He just said, look, I need to mix this one. This is a bit personal, So, and of course, it became a huge hit, which is the story of my production career. When I was producing things, whoever was around, the manager or the artist or something, they said, wow, I've never heard anything like this before. And I used to think, oh, that must be really good. And then with all these pop singles that I was doing back in the mid-'80s, because I started working for different record companies, I began to think, if I ever hear that, that's a bad sign. Because people want to hear pop music that sounds like that they recognize. Yeah. And I hated that concept. I always want to create something different and new. I don't want to create a pop song that sounds just like the last one that was a hit. But to be a producer back then, that seemed to be what it was. So as soon as I heard a manager say, wow, I've never heard anything like that, and I went, really? Oh dear. I knew it was not going to work.
Having said that, though, I don't think anyone who's seriously, we have all this mindset in radio. There are the fans, the fair weather fans, who buy an album for these singles, and then there's the fans who lift up an album and study it and like your drumming and then find you someplace else before the internet was even born. Bruce Hornsby's album was sent to me yesterday. I just got to tell you this. And Bruce Hornsby is one of those guys who doesn't like to stay in the same place. Bruce Hornsby.
Wow.
And this is connected to what you just said. I'm listening to this album, and my wife and I are in the car, and my wife says, what the hell is this? This is so moody and weird. And I'm going, but Bruce Hornsby, as an example, is the reason why I like blues more, why I like jazz more. Because it's like the Windham Hill label in the 80s when they were releasing all that new age music. People just buy it because they trusted the label.
Yeah.
After a while, you get someone who takes you by the hand musically and brings you someplace else. So what you just said is very much like, because I like it now because I've heard it about 10 times. But at first I thought, what is this? Like, what's he doing? And there's always that thing, like you just touched on a while ago. People always want to hear the way it is over and over again. And that's the last thing. He would be dead now. Bruce Hornsby he'd probably hang himself if he had to do that song again. So that's what I'm hearing here.
Yeah. Now, I have to tell you, I love Bruce. When his first single came out, That Is the Way It Is, I mean, I actually love that song. I thought that was great. And also Elliot Shiner engineered it, so I know where it was done, mega tracks. And I was a big fan. But then I was on a session with Bruce, and he was playing piano, and it was a David Pack production of The West Side Story. And it was like mid-90s, like probably 95, if I'm correct. Branford Marsalis was also on the session. I think Patty Austin was singing live in a booth. I think that was it. I think that was, there might have been a percussionist there. I didn't know him. And I had no idea, how Bruce would play. He was phenomenal. Absolutely. I went, damn, I had no idea he could play, Like,
Simon, what era was it? What year approximately would that have been?
This was 95.
Oh, yeah, he was practicing 10 hours a day back then. He was insane. It was crazy.
Well, he was stunning and a lovely man, and so I've always been a huge Bruce fan. Huge Bruce fan. I thought he was absolutely stunning. I was like, damn, that's playing, So, no, it was great. I'm really glad to hear he's got a new record. I'll look out for it.
Yeah. He, and like I said, I like albums on a first listen if I don't necessarily love it, and you get tired of those anyway really quick. But now I'm just going, it's godlike. I love everything he's done. What was the impetus for you to write the book?
Ooh, just interesting stories, I guess.
They won't be lost, at least.
To some people, I hope. And although I actually started it whilst I was still with Toto on tour in the 2000s, and then I stopped for a period, didn't touch it for a period, and I'm slowly getting back to it. I haven't really written much, but now what I'm doing is this archiving, which is helping me kind of get I've kind of forgotten what I've written, actually, because I remember something. I go, oh, I should write about that, and then I go open the folder, and I go down and I go, oh, I've already written about that. That's weird. I've forgotten that.
But that happens. So, I think that happens to everybody. On some that is. Don't feel bad, because I don't know anybody in my life that doesn't, at my age or older, they don't have that kind of stuff. By the way, what's the timeline? I don't want to keep you forever, but what's the timeline for the book, you think?
The timeline for the book?
For the book, yeah.
I don't have one yet, because I don't really have enough of it written.
Okay.
And I'm still trying to figure out. I've read a lot of autobiographies of late. I love that. Engineers' autobiographies, producers. I really find that fascinating. Some musicians, too. So I'm getting an idea of how they present. And one of the things I see is, and this even goes for some of the early ones, like Bill Wyman, like a Rolling Stone or something like that, Stoned Again or whatever it was. I noticed that all the earlier years are really intriguing and really interesting. And then about 2/3 through the book, it starts to lose its impetus. And I've noticed this with a lot of autobiographies. It kind of gets a little boring, actually. So I've got to figure out a way of presenting it in the timeline. There's various ways you can do this. You can bounce backwards and forwards in years, which is what I think is actually quite cool to do. It doesn't have to be chronological, The other thing I'd like to bring in is this two generations thing. When I was very young, I did an album with my dad called The Two Generations. I think it was in 1973. And two generations of the music business. I mean, he was in it from the early 20s, the beginning of jazz.
Yeah.
I can't, I'm not quite sure what the word is, confirm a lot of his. I've interviewed a few people who were in his band before they passed away. I can't confirm a lot of the stories. So I've got to figure out a way of doing that. But one thing I want to do is do flashbacks to his life and write about that, because I think there's some interesting things there.
That's a good idea. I always look at that as juggling, because I wrote a lot for papers in Vancouver when I lived there. I'm in Calgary now. We moved here for autism, but we used to call that juggling writing, right? Bringing it back and forth, and if done well, it's more intriguing, I find, for the audience. For the reader, yes. Yeah. I think so, because I've noticed a lot of these autobiographies. Herbie Hancock, at the end it was like, oh, another page. I've run out of steam. Isn't that funny? Becomes anticlimactic. With a lot. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something to learn from them and try to do it in a different way. Hopefully, Yeah.
Make sure you comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. And buy a t-shirt, help support our channel. Link in the description of this video. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music.